So we tested a few air coolers. But that's not enough. Altogether, we have 21 air coolers. So let's take a look how these compare. Montech P20C Meat Tower case is a high-quality compact PC case that supports up to 330mm eATX motherboards. The P20C can fit plenty of fans and radiators. It comes with 320mm fans pre-installed, as well as a built-in GPU holder. Cable management is easy and simplified. It comes in 4 different variants: black, white, ARGB, and solid side panel. Check out the Montech P20C in the description below. So then the big question is, can the 13900K be air-cooled, and which one of these coolers is the best? Now, I'm gonna continue this video from what we already tested on the previous video, where we tested 14 coolers, and now I've created exactly the same test setup. We're gonna keep going. We have another 7 air coolers altogether. Actually, it's extra 8 coolers. Let's see how do these compare. But this is not your usual cooler test, because as much as we like to see which cooler has the, can keep the CPU down as cool as possible, we want to put this on the 13900K and test it slightly differently. So basically we're going to be running the Cinebench R23 test for 10 minutes straight, and then we're going to see what the score is going to be. The higher the score, that means the better the cooler, because the cooler can keep the CPU coolest down and can let the CPU boost to the highest clock speed. So it's slightly different than what you usually see. But this is more like a real world where you'd actually just plonk one of those coolers onto the CPU and see which one is the best. Also, for this benchmark, or the bar for this test, we have tested the Team Group T4 Siren 360mm AIO, which is performing right on the top of this list now here. Now we can see how much worse or better are these air coolers here, and if they can keep up with the AIO. So the AIO is the benchmark, but now the coolers. The first cooler we're going to be testing is this Deepcool Assassin IV, which is the newest cooler in this bunch here, because this has been just released, and this is supposed to be their highest end cooler. But as you can see on the list, we already have a few Deepcool coolers, but now this one is supposed to be the best. Now in terms of power limits for this test, we're going to be using exactly the same as in previous one, where the PL1 and PL2 limits are 285 watts, not like 300 plus something ridiculousness that actually isn't feasible. So this is still going to push all of those coolers right to the limit, and the Turbo Boost power time window is 128 seconds. Let's open Cinebench and hardware info, and let's start this test. 10 minutes, go. As you can see, 284 watts, and we are already thermal limiting. Oh, not thermal throttling. Yes, we are again. So as you can see, not all of the clock speeds are boosting to 5.3, but 5.2. So we'll see how well do even the E cores actually are. Some of them 4.2, 4.1. Interesting. Look, 3 P cores are about 10 degrees higher than the rest of them as we are boosting through here. For the Thermalpaste, we're using exactly the same Thermalpaste as on the previous test as well, which is the Arctic MX6, and it's spreaded around the cooler perfectly. So we'll see what's going to happen with this test then. Okay, the Assassin 4 has completed its test, and the results are not so good actually. If you're looking at the actual score, the average of 10 minutes of Cinebench runs, then we're actually scoring right on the bottom of the field, not on the top of the field, interestingly. So this is 5.8% slower than the AIO. Now, interestingly, the Deepcool AK620 Dark Plus is actually much higher there, only third in that place. So I don't know what's going on with this one here. Now, I have actually 2 Assassin 4s. I've got this one and the pre-production model. So this is the actual full production, unit. This is exactly that one here. And I've tested it with this one. So this is what everyone should be getting. But for some reason, it's not keeping up as well. Next up, the Be Quiet Dark Rock Pro 4. Let's go. Whoa, look at this. I'm just installing this one, and this box here says Intel 1700XXX and 1800XXX. So they might have the next socket support already for this one that we don't know of. Be quiet. What do you know that we don't know? So this is also a dual tower cooler now, and on the box it actually says 250 watt TDP. So it's quite close to what we're pushing this cooler with. The previous Assassin IV was also 7 heat pipe and dual tower cooler, but this one here now is push kind of configuration for the fan. So it pushes through, and then push is kind of the middle one. The Assassin one had the fan in the back, so it was a pull configuration. So let's see how well does this one do. Instantly thermal throttling. That was like very, very fast. These fans though seem much quieter. We'll see what happens. This is clocking the wattage down quite a bit. We're 259, 58 watts, so 30 watts less than what we were before, and we're 5 to 5.1 gigahertz instead of 5.3. So we'll see what happens in the end. Okay, we have completed this Darkrock Pro test, and as you can see, the results are not as good as we might think. There is 26.3 degrees, so there's maybe 1 degree warmer than in the previous test of all of those coolers there. So, you know, within margin of error, 1 or 2 degrees, right? But the 10-minute test, we got 36,141 tests, which is actually right on the very bottom of our list. The Be Quiet Pure Rock 2 FX actually got better results. The reason for this is because of the fans. These are very weak fans for this cooler. The tower probably are gonna extract the heat very well from the CPU, but because those fans can't cool the tower, it's not performing very well. Now, to prove my point, I want to test something. Here are 2 of probably the best fans on the market right now. The Fantix T30 fans. And I'm going to replace the front fan, which was this 120mm Pure Wings 2 that goes up to 1500 RPM. And I'm going to replace this one, as well as put another fan in the back of this. I'm going to leave the middle fan in there just for the sake of it, but these are going to go in the front and back, and let's see what happens. So as you can see, we got quite a bit higher score, 37,390, so we pumped up quite a few bits. So we improved our scores about 3% by having better fans there. We're still roughly in the middle ground, so it does show that actually perhaps the contact and pressure and the way the heat pipes and everything works for this LGA 1700 and 3900K isn't quite perfect, even when adding like absolutely the best fans in here. But as you can see, the fan upgrade does improve the cooling of the air cooler quite a bit. Let's move on to the next one. Interesting thing I noticed while trying to install this is that this bottom kind of a plate, whatever that is there, on the other side, someone's like painted something over with a Sharpie or a marker. As you can see, you can see that it's like been painted over, so there's been a scratch or something. Okay, this Montech DT24 Premium, let's go. Not thermal throttling yet. Now to thermal throttling. So halfway through we are thermal throttling, which is, you know, usual in what we're seeing here. The interesting thing is on the box of this cooler, it says 270 watts TDP. So we're only slightly over what this cooler is promising to handle. So let's see how well does it do overall. So what is this cooler? Basically, there's a different version of this cooler as well. This is the premium version that comes with an RGB top cover, and I think maybe better fans, something like that. But you can get this like more like bland or plain version of this cooler as well, which will be a little bit cheaper. I'm going to leave that in the description below as well. They should perform roughly about the same, but this one just has you know, a few extra quirks basically. Okay, this Montech DT24 Premium has completed the test, and the score is 36,708, which is 6.33% slower than the AIO. Interestingly, it kind of goes on the bottom of this league here and slightly slower than the Assassin 4, but still performing quite well. Now, there is 36.5 degrees in here, so perhaps 1-2 degrees warmer in the room that can affect the results, but we still get a good high score of all of these coolers in here. What I can say about this cooler is that the fans are actually very quiet as well. This is one of the quieter coolers that I have here. This one has 6 heat pipes and dual towers as well. There are a few other coolers that we want to try. There's 2 from Thermalpaste, and you might have not heard of them as much before, but I want to test them out. The Frost Commander 140 goes next. Okay, here's the cooler, and here's how this one is a bit different. As you can see, this one only has 5 heat pipes. The previous ones have had 6 or 7. As you can see, there's 6 on the Montech tower here, but these 5s are absolutely massive. I think these are 8 or perhaps even 10 millimeter heat pipes. Absolutely massive heat pipes. So what we can see is how good are the big heat pipes compared to the smaller ones. We'll have to find out. And then also this tower design is quite interesting. If you look at the ones, you can see it from the back, they kind of like lap over each other. So it's not completely straight, but there's kind of like a angle tower on the back. So let's see how this goes. Now the fans for these are quite interesting as well. You've got 140mm fan and 120mm fan. So quite similar what goes on usually there, but the 140mm fan actually goes 1800 RPM and this one goes 1850. So slightly faster than the middle fan. It's very rare that I make this mistake, but I believe I left the little peel sticker on the bottom of the cooler when I put it on, because I don't remember taking it off, and the fans are going way too fast to even get to the windows. So I believe I've left it on. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, I have left it on. I didn't even put Thermalpaste on. What on earth? What was I thinking? So this guy has completed the test now and looks like we're getting 36,000 points, 326, which is right on the bottom of the pack there again. Now, to be honest, I expected this to perform slightly better. So let's move on to the next one. This is the Thermalpaste Phantom Spirit 120 SE. Let's see how this one goes, because now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 heat pipes compared to the 5 one in here. Let's see what's the difference. Now, looking at the results here, this is actually performing one of the best ones. In fact, the best cooler we have tested today. About 5.5% slower than the AIO, but still interestingly surprising that we're not performing better than some of the like Assassin X120, which is just a single tower cooler, and the Freezer Sports 34 Esports Duo. And then I started thinking, like, why is this? Obviously, I don't have a lab here where I can control the environment. Now, even though the temperature is about the same that what we tested with these ones there, about 1 to 2 degrees maximum difference, what is different is the humidity. I remember the humidity being about 41% rather than 35%, which means that the air is much drier and there's less water in the air, meaning that actually water is a very, very good heat conductor, and we're not perhaps cooling it down as well because it's not as humid. Just an interesting thought. Let me know what you think in the comment section below if you agree with this. But finally, now we have 2 very interesting coolers. Perhaps you have never heard of these before. They are from Enermax, and Enermax isn't a new company, but perhaps these coolers for you are. Firstly, we're gonna try this ETS-F40-FS. which is a single tower cooler, perhaps a little bit lower end cooler. It doesn't say how much TDP this can handle, but then we also have this a little bit of a bigger single tower cooler. And interestingly, this here says that it can handle up to 230 watts TDP support. So that's going to be interesting. We're going to test the smaller one first, so let's get that one installed. Thermal throttles. It's very, very quiet, this fan. I'm not sure how much it can push through. It's struggling quite a bit actually. We're already 4.9 to 5. It's not able to push it to 285 at all. It's quite quiet, so let's see what happens in 10 minutes. Okay, this Enermax ETS-F40 is completed now, the 10-minute test, and looking at the results there, we've got the lowest score ever. So this is about 10% now slower than an AIO, which still, like, in a bad air cooler isn't that bad of a thing, but your CPU is kind of thermal throttled down to 10% worse, which we're starting to perhaps get into a different category of CPUs. We're still not on the i7 territory though, so that's good. Now I do want to say that I'm not a big fan of this design. It kind of looks like a stormtroopery design, like this AIO, like a RGB on the back, and then this on this side. But I think the biggest fault of this is the fan speed. The fan is not that powerful at all to push some air through. Okay, so this is the Enermax ETS-T50 now, and 10 minutes, let's go. Bear in mind that the humidity is slightly higher than before, and thermal throttling. So it's still thermal throttles, 23 degrees, slightly lower temperature, but we'll see what the 10 minutes says, because look at that, we're already 4.95 gigahertz. Oh my word. The box says that this is up to 230 watts. And as you can see, if we're looking at the wattage there, we're literally 220 watts. So this is not letting it pull much further. So this might perform quite bad as well, but we'll see. Oh my word, look at this. We're 4.8 already, 4.9 and 3.8 on the E cores, 213 watts. So I've taken this back grill bracket off just because this is just the guidance for like the airflow. You can like move it around, so you can kind of guide the airflow around wherever you want, which is interesting, but it actually kind of insulates a little bit of these heat sinks there. Right now we're pulling only 208 watts. So interestingly, on the box it says 230, but it can't even handle 230 watt CDP. As you can see, 206 is the max we're going to be getting, and looks like we might get the lowest score ever, even though it's a bit cooler in the room and the humidity is higher, so it gets the best kind of a solution or best conditions to perform better, but no luck. So this way we can just guide the airflow which way we want, make it go up and high. Okay, this Enermax ETS-T50 AXE or AXE version has completed now, and even though being a bit higher and cooler than the previous one, interestingly it performed even worse. So this is right on the bottom of the pack, where you can see 34,333 points, which is 12% slower than the AIO. Now, interestingly, something the likes of Thermalpaste, Assassin King or Assassin X, which are $19, $20 coolers, can beat this cooler pretty much 7%, 8%, something like that, which is quite a lot of performance between this one. So for some reason these Enermax coolers aren't quite as good. I do think this is due to the fans. The fans aren't as powerful, and if you look at the fan designs on it, they don't look as aggressive onto air pressure, neither the airflow. And we've got one more. This is the last one. This is called the Gamdias Boreas P1720. I have never personally heard about this cooler before, but there's some very interesting things on the box. It says up to 270 watt TDP, which we're gonna see, high-end performance, 14 centimeter dual heat tower, 7 heat pipes. Let's get it mounted and see how well does it do. This is another one of those interesting coolers where you have a smaller fan in the front and a bit bigger fan in the middle. So 140 in the middle and 120 in the front of the fan. Ooh, you get a screwdriver with it. Okay, one interesting thing I have noticed about the installation of this cooler is that when you mount these little brackets on there, usually there's like 3 different holes on the side here, like 1, 2, 3. But this one is just like, it's been routed out just like one straight line, which means that when you put the cooler in there, I'll show you now when I get these screws going. As you can see, this now like moves around just like that. So if you want to, they don't go exactly to the end. You kind of have to like find the balance where they're lined up. The other side is exactly the same. As you can see, this is not even. So I'm gonna have to like do some magic, figure out where exactly do these line up to make them like level. So it's a little bit of a faffy way of doing it, because you don't get like a certain exact point where these have to sit. They're kind of just randomly there. Have to slide them around, hoping that these will line up and you've done them evenly. Because I still have the protective film on, I'll see if I can get it mounted. Okay, 10 minutes, here goes nothing. Okay, first load, instantly thermal throttling. Yikes, 285 watts, can't quite manage this. 2 of the cores are thermal throttling, but well, let's have a look what's going to be the first core. 37476, it could be good, but we'll have a look. Seems like the fans have quite a bit of power actually. They're pushing quite a lot of air out, but 266 watts right now already after like the first load. Doesn't quite look as good. Okay, last minute to go, and looks like we are keeping the CPU around 253 watts, where Intel boosts its wattage. Look at that, 254, 253. It like keeps it there. Let's have a look at the core temperatures here. 3 of them are like 100 degrees. The rest of them are quite all right actually. The last 3 P cores are quite hot. So we've finished 36,519 points, and if we're looking at the scores, how well did it do, you can see that we scored the best out of the bottom bunch basically, just slightly faster than the Be Quiet Dark Rock TF2, which is interesting. Which wasn't a very good cooler actually. Slightly slower than the Montech DT24 Premium, but just kind of okay down there. Kind of in the same ballpark as the Deepcool Assassin IV. So it's kind of okay, like somewhere in the lower end, but not as impressive as the Thermalpaste Assassin X120, which is like a $19 cooler. As you can see, there isn't that much difference between like all of the coolers that we have tested here. Obviously this is not a very controlled environment, and you know, you can argue that you should have everything the same, but all of these have had very similar temperatures. Like this is 25.5 in this room right now. And then in a real world, like if user experience, if people use it, that's the type of performance that, you know, you can expect to get. So what have we learned today? Perhaps in this video we used more coolers that aren't as maybe well known. I know Thermalpaste, we did have a few from Thermalpaste, but they aren't like the most well known as far as I think in the industry. We do have the Darkrock Pro that is very, very well known, and the Deepcool Assassin IV, which I am actually slightly disappointed with, because I would have thought that this will perform right on top of the pack there, but unfortunately we didn't quite see that. Even though we're running exactly the same situation, exactly the same coolers, exactly the same configuration, everything's exactly the same before. So perhaps sticking with some of the more known coolers in there is a better idea. I do think I'd like to know what other people think on the Assassin 4 cooler review. I don't know if I've got two, I don't know, flukes, for example, for some weird reason, or what is the reason why these coolers didn't perform as well. Now, the question still remains, can you air cool the 13900K? And yes, you can, but I'd highly recommend sticking to the Intel's limits. Like I've always said, air cooling above Intel's limits is really not feasible, and even at that Intel limits we might be thermal throttling. So if you want the best performance extracted from your 13900K, then I highly recommend AIOs, just because they do cool it down better. Because the latest generation CPUs from AMD and Intel both have kind of changed the way they perform. They want to give you the highest clock speeds possible at the thermal limit. So they're not actually capping the clock speeds, but they've said, look, these are the ridiculously high clock speeds that you can get now if you have the thermals. If you don't have the thermals, we're going to give you as much as your thermal limit gives you. So whatever cooler you're going to have, you're going to still extract the best out of the CPU, if that makes sense. But you still might leave some performance on the table, because if you had a better cooler, it will run it faster. Previously, we just had perhaps the air cooler and AIO run the CPU exactly the same performance, but AIO's, you know, temperature was a bit lower. But now we have both of them running at pretty much 100 degrees, but just you get more performance out with your AIO. So perhaps sticking with a better cooler is even more important now, especially when going with high-end Intel CPUs there. Now, if you do want to pick any of these coolers up, I highly recommend you checking out the links in the description below, as well as some of the other reviews out there, because I am using the 13900K, which is a slightly different shape of the IHS, and the chips, everything is slightly different. So all of the cooler manufacturers had to actually make adjustments in their cooler and mounting kit to mount this in there, and perhaps it wasn't designed for this socket or this CPU in the first place, but they've adapted to it. So some of the newer coolers perhaps come out a bit better, which that's why I'm still disappointed about the Assassin 4, because I thought this is a newer cooler. It was, you know, released later than the 12th and 13th gen, so that's that. But if you're a creator or non-creator gamer who wants to build themselves the best bang for buck creator PC, and you don't want to leave any performance on the table, or just want to get the best performance for your money, then check out the build guides in the description below. They're all for free. There's 4 parts. Whatever your budget is, there's a video for you down there. Just click the one that's closest to yours, and then I'll explain everything there. Upgrades, downgrades, and you can adjust it all down there. Thanks guys for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.